What if everything you have been told about manifestation is backwards? What if trying harder is the very thing keeping reality stuck? And what if the fastest way to change your life has nothing to do with desire, effort, or belief at all? Most people are taught that manifestation is about forcing reality, forcing thoughts, forcing emotions, forcing belief. But Jacobo Grinberg discovered something deeply unsettling and far more powerful. He found that reality does not respond to pressure. It responds to order. This is where almost everyone goes wrong. You don't fail to manifest because you lack faith or discipline. You fail because your perception is fragmented, scattered, and filled with internal noise. Grinberg spent decades studying consciousness not as an abstract idea, but as a measurable process. Through experiments with perception, attention, and neurological coherence, he uncovered a hidden structure behind reality itself, a field of information from which reality emerges moment by moment. He called it the Syntergic field. According to Grinberg, the world you experience is not fixed or solid in the way it appears. It is assembled continuously by your nervous system and your awareness. When awareness is disordered, reality appears resistant and slow to change. But when perception becomes ordered, reality reorganizes with it. This is why manifestation is not about adding something new to your life. It is about removing interference from perception. Control, in Grinberg's work, never meant willpower or domination. Psychic control meant the ability to stabilize attention without effort, to hold awareness steady without chasing outcomes. And when perception stabilizes, reality follows naturally. What surprised many researchers was how quickly this process unfolded. Not in years, not even in months, sometimes in hours. Grinberg observed that when inner dialogue quiets, the field behind reality becomes coherent. And when coherence appears, events align on their own. This is also why effort often breaks the process. Strong desire creates tension. Tension implies separation, and separation fragments the field. Grinberg warned that emotional intensity, even positive emotion, can slow manifestation because it disturbs perceptual order. Instead, he pointed towards something far more subtle: alignment without intention, observation without expectation, a calm, neutral awareness that does not interfere. In this video, you will learn what psychic control truly means in Jacobo Grinberg's work. You will understand why forcing reality delays results instead of accelerating them. You will discover how perception organizes the Syntergic field, and why time seems to compress when awareness becomes still. Most importantly, you will learn how this shift can begin immediately, not as a belief, but as an experience. By the end of this video, you will see manifestation in a completely different way, not as something you chase, but as something that responds when you stop chasing. This is not motivation or wishful thinking. This is consciousness research, and one of the most misunderstood discoveries in Grinberg's work. A lesser-known insight he emphasized was that the fastest changes occur when the observer disappears, when the mind stops narrating and awareness simply rests. That is when the field adjusts. If affirmations have felt empty, if visualizations felt exhausting, and if forcing positivity has never worked for you, this video was made for you. The problem was never you. It was the method. Stay with this video until the end, because understanding this shift changes how you interact with reality itself. Welcome to Awaken Synchronicity, a channel dedicated to uncovering the deeper mechanics of consciousness, perception, and reality through the work of Jacobo Grinberg. If you want to see reality respond without force and understand how alignment reshapes experience, subscribe to the channel and let's begin. Before we talk about the technique itself, we need to clear up one of the biggest misunderstandings around the word psychic. When most people hear it, they think of magic, supernatural powers, or special abilities that only a few people are born with. Jacobo Grinberg meant none of that. In his work, psychic had nothing to do with fantasy or mysticism. It referred to something far more practical and far more measurable: the way attention operates. Before we talk about the results people want, it is important to understand what is actually being controlled. Psychic control is not about controlling events, people, or circumstances. It is about controlling where attention rests and how stable it remains. Grinberg observed that attention is not passive. It actively shapes how reality appears. Wherever attention goes, structure follows. Before we talk about manifestation, we have to look at attention itself. Attention is not just focus in the everyday sense. It is the organizing force of perception. In Grinberg's research, attention acts like a stabilizing agent in the Syntergic field. When attention is scattered, the field remains unstable. When attention is steady, the field becomes ordered. And when the field is ordered, reality reflects that order. Most people live with attention that constantly jumps. Thoughts interrupt each other. Emotions rise and fall. Images of the past and future pull awareness in different directions. This creates a fragmented perceptual field. According to Grinberg, fragmentation is the reason reality feels resistant. It is not because reality is stubborn, but because perception lacks coherence. Before we talk about changing anything externally, notice how rarely attention stays in one place without effort. The moment you try to hold it, tension appears. That tension is already a form of interference. Psychic control does not come from forcing attention to stay still. It comes from allowing attention to settle naturally, without pressure. Grinberg emphasized that attention becomes powerful only when it is relaxed. A tense mind creates noise in the Syntergic field. A relaxed mind creates structure. This is why strong intention often fails. Intention adds weight. It introduces desire, and desire implies something is missing. That sense of lack destabilizes attention and distorts perception. Before we talk about techniques, it helps to understand this simple relationship. Attention shapes perception. Perception shapes the field, and the field shapes experience. Nothing mystical is happening here. It is a chain of organization. When attention is unstable, experience becomes unpredictable. When attention is stable, experience becomes consistent. Psychic control in this context is the ability to remain aware without chasing thoughts or resisting them. It is the capacity to observe without labeling, without judging, without trying to change what appears. This kind of attention has a unique quality. It is quiet, but alert, passive, but precise. Grinberg noted that when attention reaches this state, the Syntergic field responds almost immediately. Reality does not need to be convinced. It simply aligns. Events begin to reflect the internal order because there is nothing distorting the signal. Attention becomes a clear reference point, and reality organizes around it. Before we move forward, keep this in mind. Whatever stabilizes attention stabilizes reality, not because you demand it, but because reality mirrors coherence. Psychic control is not about doing more, it is about interfering less. Behind everything you see, touch, and experience, there is something Grinberg described as a field of information, not a metaphor, not a spiritual idea, a functional field that exists before matter takes shape. He called this the Syntergic field. According to his research, reality is not made of solid objects first. Objects appear when this underlying field becomes organized in a specific way. What you perceive as matter is the result of coherence within this field. The Syntergic field is always present. It does not turn on or off. What changes is the level of order within it. When the field is disorganized, reality feels unstable, inconsistent, and resistant. When the field becomes coherent, reality appears structured and responsive. This coherence is not created by physical action, it is influenced by perception. Consciousness interacts with the Syntergic field constantly, whether you are aware of it or not. Most people influence this field unconsciously. Thoughts, emotions, expectations, and internal dialogue continuously disturb or organize the field without deliberate intention. Every interpretation adds structure or noise. Every reaction introduces movement. This is why two people can experience the same situation and see completely different realities. They are interacting with the same field, but through different perceptual structures. Grinberg proposed that perception acts like a tuning mechanism. When perception is clear and unified, the field organizes efficiently. When perception is fragmented, the field remains unstable. This instability is not punishment or randomness. It is simply a reflection of how consciousness is interacting with the field at that moment. Reality mirrors the quality of perception with precision. This leads directly to the question of time. Most people experience change as slow and difficult. They assume reality has inertia, as if the world resists movement. Grinberg suggested a different explanation. Reality appears slow because perception is scattered. Attention jumps between thoughts, memories, and expectations, never settling long enough to create coherence in the field. Without coherence, change unfolds in small, inconsistent steps. When perception becomes ordered, time behaves differently. Events that once required long periods begin to align rapidly. This is not because time itself speeds up, but because fewer internal contradictions are present. Perception stops pulling reality in multiple directions at once. When awareness becomes unified, the field no longer has to resolve conflicting signals. Results accelerate naturally. This is why Grinberg observed that change can happen within very short windows, not because of effort, but because of alignment. A coherent perceptual state creates a clear pattern in the Syntergic field. Once that pattern stabilizes, reality reorganizes around it. What normally takes weeks or months can happen in hours when there is no internal interference. The idea of a 24-hour shift is not about setting a deadline. It is about understanding how quickly the field responds when perception is clean. Most of the delay people experience is self-generated. It comes from mental noise, emotional oscillation, and constant reinterpretation. Each reinterpretation resets the pattern. Each doubt fractures coherence. This is where inner silence becomes critical. Noise fragments the field. Every word in the mind introduces structure. Not all structure is helpful. Much of it is redundant, contradictory, or unnecessary. Inner dialogue continuously reshapes perception, often without awareness. This constant narration keeps the field in motion, preventing stable organization. Silence, in Grinberg's work, is not emptiness. It is precision. When inner dialogue stops, even briefly, perception becomes direct. There is no filter, no commentary. Awareness rests on what is present without distortion. This creates immediate coherence in the Syntergic field. Silence removes interference rather than adding control. Psychic control begins at this point, not when you think differently, but when you stop thinking compulsively. The moment inner dialogue pauses, attention stabilizes on its own. There is no need to hold it. It holds itself. This state does not require training or belief. It occurs naturally whenever mental noise drops. Grinberg noted that even a few seconds of true inner silence can reorganize perception. The field responds instantly because the signal becomes clear. There is no conflict between what is observed and what is expected. Awareness simply registers what is. That registration creates order. Most people assume silence is passive or unproductive. Grinberg saw it as the most active state of consciousness. In silence, perception is no longer divided. There is no observer and observed. There is only awareness interacting directly with the field. This interaction is what shapes reality at its deepest level. Inner silence also removes emotional charge. Emotions often ride on thought. When thought quiets, emotional fluctuations settle. This emotional neutrality further stabilizes perception. Without emotional spikes, the field remains coherent longer. The longer coherence is maintained, the faster reality aligns. This does not mean suppressing thoughts or emotions. Suppression creates tension, and tension is another form of noise. Silence arises when attention stops feeding the inner narrative. Thoughts may still appear, but they are not followed. They pass without engagement. In that non-engagement, coherence forms naturally. Grinberg emphasized that silence is not something you achieve, it is something you allow. The mind becomes quiet when it is no longer trying to control itself. In that quiet, perception becomes whole. Time stops fragmenting experience. The field stabilizes, and reality responds without effort. As perception settles into silence, the boundary between inner and outer begins to soften. Events feel less separate. Responses feel immediate. This is not imagination. It is the direct result of a coherent interaction with the syntergic field. The world appears to move differently because the observer is no longer interfering with it. Most people touch this state briefly without noticing. Moments of deep absorption, sudden calm, a pause between thoughts. These moments are often dismissed. Grinberg considered them gateways. Each pause is an opportunity for reality to reorganize. Each moment of silence is a reset point for the field. When silence becomes familiar, attention no longer struggles. Perception remains unified without effort. The syntergic field stays coherent longer, and change, which once felt distant and slow, begins to appear closer and more immediate, not because reality has changed, but because perception has finally stopped pulling it apart. The observer position is one of the most misunderstood aspects of Grinberg's work. Most people assume that to change reality, you must imagine something vividly, repeat affirmations, or emotionally convince yourself that an outcome will happen. Grinberg pointed in the opposite direction. In the observer position, you do not imagine, you do not repeat statements, you do not try to feel anything special, you simply observe. Observation in this context is not passive watching. It is a specific quality of awareness. You observe as if the outcome already exists, but without thinking about it. There is no internal dialogue confirming it, no mental picture being forced, no emotional rehearsal. The observation is quiet, stable, and non-reactive. Awareness rests on reality without trying to modify it. This is difficult for most people because the mind is trained to interfere. The moment something is observed, the mind wants to comment, judge, compare, or desire. Each of these actions introduces distortion. Grinberg noticed that the syntergic field responds fastest when observation is clean. Clean observation has no agenda. It does not push reality forward or pull it closer. It simply holds a stable reference. When you observe as if the outcome already exists, you are not pretending, you are not visualizing a future. You are positioning awareness in a way that removes contradiction. There is no gap between now and later. No mental tension about how or when. This absence of tension is what stabilizes the field. Reality does not respond to demand. It responds to coherence. Desire is the main disruptor of this process. Desire creates movement in perception. It signals that something is missing. That signal fragments the field because it introduces separation between observer and outcome. In the observer position, desire is absent, not suppressed, but unnecessary. Awareness does not need to want what it already recognizes as present. This is why affirmations often fail. Repeating words reinforces the idea that something is not yet real. Imagination, when driven by effort, creates internal conflict. One part of the mind imagines, another doubts, and another waits. These conflicting signals prevent coherence. Observation without desire removes all three. There is nothing to convince and nothing to resist. Emotional neutrality is what allows this observation to remain stable. Strong emotion, even positive emotion, distorts perception. Excitement creates anticipation. Anticipation introduces time. Time reintroduces waiting. Waiting fractures coherence. Grinberg observed that the most effective perceptual states were emotionally calm, not dull, not indifferent, calm and alert. Neutral awareness creates a smooth interaction with the syntergic field. There are no spikes or drops in attention, no emotional surges that pull perception away from stability. Calm attention does not fluctuate. It remains present without gripping. This steadiness is what allows the field to organize itself clearly. Most people fail here because they believe emotion equals power. They assume intensity accelerates results. In reality, intensity often delays them. Emotional charge amplifies internal noise. It adds unnecessary information to the field. The field must resolve this noise before coherence can form. Neutrality removes that burden. Grinberg emphasized that neutrality is not apathy. Apathy disconnects awareness. Neutrality sharpens it. In neutrality, perception is clear and responsive. You notice details without reacting to them. You remain present without expectation. This quality of attention is rare, but natural. It appears whenever emotional commentary drops. As neutrality stabilizes observation, coherence begins to build. This is where the so-called 24-hour window becomes relevant. Once coherence is reached, the syntergic field does not delay its response. There is no need for gradual adjustment. Reality reorganizes to match the perceptual structure it is receiving. The speed of this reorganization surprises people because they assume reality has momentum. Grinberg suggested that what we experience as momentum is actually perceptual inconsistency. When perception changes repeatedly, reality appears slow. When perception holds steady, reality adjusts quickly. The field responds to clarity, not persistence. The 24-hour window is not a rule, it is an observation. It reflects how fast reality can respond when perception remains coherent long enough. In many cases, coherence does not last more than a few seconds. Thoughts interrupt, emotions rise, desire returns. Each interruption resets the pattern. When coherence remains uninterrupted, response accelerates. Reality reorganizes not because you want something, but because the structure is clear. The field does not evaluate intentions. It reflects order. A clear perceptual pattern creates a clear experiential outcome. There is no reward or punishment involved, only correspondence. This is why effort is unnecessary and often harmful. Effort introduces strain. Strain introduces resistance. Resistance destabilizes perception. The observer position eliminates effort by removing the need to act internally. You are not doing anything to reality. You are allowing perception to remain consistent. As coherence deepens, time begins to feel different. Moments stretch. Attention becomes continuous. Events seem to line up without planning. This is not coincidence. It is the natural result of a stable interaction with the syntergic field. When perception stops fluctuating, reality no longer has to compensate. Most people touch this state briefly, often without recognizing it. Moments of quiet certainty, calm awareness, without excitement. A sense of this is already handled without thought. These moments pass quickly because the mind rushes to explain them. Explanation reintroduces noise. Grinberg pointed out that explanation is not required for reality to respond. Understanding can come later. During observation, explanation interferes. The observer position is pre-verbal. It exists before language, before evaluation, before desire. In that space, perception is whole. Emotional neutrality allows this space to remain open. Without emotional pull, attention does not collapse into thought. Without excitement, there is no anticipation. Without fear, there is no resistance. The field receives a single, unbroken signal. That signal is coherence itself. As this state stabilizes, external conditions begin to shift in subtle ways, not dramatically at first. Small alignments, minor adjustments, timing improves. Obstacles dissolve without confrontation. These changes are often overlooked because they lack emotional intensity, yet they indicate that reality is reorganizing. The observer does not track these changes. Tracking introduces evaluation. Evaluation introduces emotion. Emotion introduces distortion. Observation remains steady by remaining uninterested in progress. This lack of interest is not negligence, it is precision. When coherence holds, reality responds fully, not symbolically, not partially, directly. The field mirrors the perceptual order it receives. The speed of this mirroring depends entirely on how long that order is maintained without interference. This is why the 24-hour window feels sudden to those who experience it. There is no build-up, no gradual shift, just alignment. Reality snaps into place because it finally has a clear reference, not because of belief, not because of effort, because the structure is unmistakable. In this state, the observer and the observed are no longer separate. Perception does not comment on reality. It participates in it directly. This participation is quiet, neutral, and exact. And in that exactness, reality finds its new arrangement. Most people assume that effort is the path to control. We are taught that trying harder, pushing longer, and focusing intensely is how change occurs. Jacobo Grinberg's research challenged this assumption at the most fundamental level. Effort, he observed, implies lack. When you are exerting effort, you are signaling to yourself and to the field behind reality that something is missing, that the desired outcome does not yet exist. That sense of absence introduces instability. It fragments attention and prevents the perception of order. Reality does not respond to what you demand, it responds to what is coherent. Effort creates tension, and tension distorts perception, making the syntergic field harder to influence. Effort is also inherently dualistic. When you try, you separate yourself from what you want. One part of your mind is the doer, the other is the receiver, and the field is left to reconcile these two conflicting signals. This split introduces friction at the most fundamental level. It is subtle, almost invisible, but it is enough to disrupt the formation of the perceptual structure necessary for manifestation. Grinberg observed that even minimal effort, when combined with desire, produces noise. That noise prevents coherence from emerging and slows the natural response of reality. The paradox of psychic control is that the less you try, the more powerful your influence becomes. The technique only works when effort drops. It requires a form of relaxation that is not laziness or disengagement. This is a conscious relaxation, a state where you stop wrestling with reality and instead allow perception to settle. Control does not come from willpower. It comes from calm awareness. The mind becomes a stable platform rather than a hammer trying to shape outcomes. In this state, perception stabilizes itself and the field can align naturally with what is being observed. Relaxation is the key that allows observation to become sustained without interruption. Sustained observation is the single most important mental action in this technique. It is deceptively simple, but it is also precise and disciplined. Sustained observation is not observation mixed with judgment, analysis, or expectation. It is a continuous holding of awareness on a single reality. No labels are applied, no interpretations are added, no desire or fear enters the process. Attention rests naturally, unobstructed. When this level of stability is achieved, perception itself becomes coherent. The field behind reality responds instantly to this coherence. The world reflects the ordered attention of the observer, not the intensity of effort. This is why the observer position is so critical. Effort disrupts it, but sustained observation supports it. The act of simply noticing without commentary or interference is enough to anchor consciousness. The moment attention holds steady, without expectation or attachment, the syntergic field begins to stabilize. A pattern forms. That pattern is not imaginary, it is functional. It is the underlying structure that gives rise to matter, timing, and events. The field mirrors the clarity of the observer, and that mirroring is what leads to tangible shifts in reality. Over time, certain signs indicate that the technique is working. Internal noise begins to reduce. Thoughts stop racing, doubts stop interfering. Even fleeting judgments fall away. This is not a forced mental quieting, but a natural settling that occurs when effort is removed. The mind is no longer a storm of competing signals. The Syntergic field now receives a single, consistent input, calm awareness. With that input, reality can reorganize without resistance. Another sign is the perception of time. When internal noise decreases, time begins to feel slower and more expansive. Events that once seemed rushed, fragmented, or chaotic start to fall into place naturally. You experience life in a more fluid rhythm, and the field adjusts in parallel. The acceleration of results is not caused by urgency, it is caused by the absence of mental interference. Coherence allows reality to respond immediately, creating the sensation of time compression without effort or force. External events also begin to align without intervention. Obstacles dissolve, opportunities appear in sequence, and circumstances organize themselves in ways that feel almost effortless. These alignments are subtle at first, easily overlooked, but they are unmistakable once observed over time. The field is responding to clear perception, not to repeated action or desire. Each alignment confirms that observation alone, held steadily and without judgment, is a functional form of control. The universe is not being forced. It is reflecting the order provided by calm attention. Perhaps most importantly, emotional detachment accompanies these changes. Without effort or desire, attachment fades naturally. You do not cling to outcomes. You do not fret over timing. You simply notice what emerges. This emotional neutrality is not indifference, it is clarity. It allows perception to remain undisturbed, which in turn maintains the coherence necessary for continued alignment. The observer remains steady, aware, and present. The field responds precisely because there is no internal conflict to distort the signal. Even subtle disruptions, doubt, expectation, or impatience can reintroduce noise. Grinberg emphasized that maintaining effortlessness is ongoing. It is not a one-time achievement. Attention must continue to hold steady. The key is noticing interruptions without reacting to them. When awareness returns to calm observation, coherence restores itself, and reality continues to respond to the clear perceptual pattern. This cyclical return to neutrality is part of the technique. It is self-correcting and regenerative. The interplay between effortlessness, sustained observation, and emotional neutrality forms the core of psychic control. Each element supports the other. Effortlessness allows observation to be sustained. Sustained observation stabilizes perception. Neutral awareness allows the field to respond naturally and immediately. The more these elements are practiced, the more pronounced the effects become. Internal noise diminishes further, temporal perception adjusts, and the external world aligns in a seemingly effortless, precise manner. In this state, the observer and the observed merge subtly. Attention and reality synchronize, and the mechanism Grinberg described, the Syntergic field, operates at peak responsiveness. The signs of success are unmistakable: clarity of mind, slow and expansive perception of time, natural alignment of events, and emotional neutrality. These are not side effects. They are the indicators that the technique is functioning exactly as intended. They reveal the field responding directly to coherence, demonstrating that control comes not from effort or force, but from calm, sustained, unlabored awareness. Reality does not respond to force. Psychic control is not about trying harder, pushing more, or demanding outcomes. It is about clarity. When awareness becomes still, when observation is calm and free from desire or tension, reality begins to rearrange itself. This is not a distant promise or something that may happen someday. It is immediate. Often, shifts appear within hours, as the Syntergic field mirrors the coherence of your perception. Now take a moment to let this sink in. For the next 24 hours, simply observe quietly. Notice your thoughts, your attention, and the way awareness rests without interference. Do not label, do not judge, do not chase. Just allow reality to respond to your calm and steady observation. If you found this video insightful, make sure to like it and subscribe to Awaken Synchronicity for more teachings that explore consciousness, perception, and the hidden mechanics of reality.